Welcome back. It's Track Talk brought to you by McCarthy Auto Group. Don't forget, you can buy a new or certified used car at McCarthy Auto Group. Go to kccars.com, and they will take care of you like they do the RacinBoys. Kirk Gilly just had a little work. Kirk, I had a chance to look at your car. Remarkable the job they did over there at McCarthy in Lee Summit.
They were outstanding, and we talked about it a week ago. They send you text messages on the progress of how they're fixing the car, and
I love that.
That's amazing to me. They even get it down to the minute of when you're going to get it back. But the best thing about what my car was involved in, I got it a day before they said I was going to get it back. So that's the motto that you and I have always believed in: under promise, over deliver. That usually gets you ahead in the game.
No doubt about it. And you get that at McCarthy Auto Group. Again, kccars.com, over 2,000 new and certified used cars. Joining us now on the show is a friend of the RacinBoys, and it seems like, gosh, dogs, every time we have him on, that we've got to talk about the city of Grain Valley. And July 10th is a big day for Grain Valley and Valley Speedway. And Dennis Shrout joins us now. Dennis, how you doing, first of all?
Good. How are you, Scott?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Man, I got to give you, Dennis, I've told you this before on the show. You're constantly in this battle, it seems like, with the city, but you always seem, every time we talk to you, like you're not going to let it get to you. You've always kept the enthusiasm, but, man, it sure is getting tough, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just a constant battle. It wears you down, and they got nothing to do. They got people hired just to screw with us, so they're paying people just to jack with us. I mean, it does wear you out, I would like to come out here and, just have a race. You're always dealing with Mother Nature and staff and,
right.
You're always dealing with
normal
equipment
things.
breakage. So you got plenty to do without having to fight with the city continually. It's a continual battle.
Dennis, the press release that you put out a little bit earlier this week, it went into a little bit more detail about the attempt to purchase the facility. And quite honestly, you and I have had this discussion. I knew that this had taken place, but you didn't really want to have to go down that road. But it seems like now you have to kind of come out with that story a little bit. Fill us in on what happened there, about the city approaching you about somebody interested in buying the property. Take us through that, if you would.
Okay, well, it all started, the city called me and asked me if I would be interested in selling property. And, of course, I said, hey, everything's for sale at a price, That's whenever I got out of the motorcycle business. I wasn't actively trying to sell it. Somebody wanted to buy it, and they offered me good money for it, so I sold it. So they came down and sent somebody down to talk to me and asked what kind of price it would take. And they didn't want just my property. They wanted my property, the motorcycle track, the sand drag track, and the city's football field. They wanted everything down here, which is about 70 or 80 acres, I think is what it is. And so we told them what I told them what I thought the property was worth, mine and Jeff's next door and the motocross track. And again, I'll be honest with you, I said it's well worth over $1 million, If you wanted to go build a facility like this today, you'd probably spend $4 or $5 million building it, So I told him, I said, it's worth, with everything that's here as a racetrack, it's worth probably, $1.2 million, $1.3 million. So a few days later, they called us down to City Hall, me and Jeff, the sand drag owner. We went down there, and they sat down. They said, well, you want too much for the property. I said, what do you mean we want too much for it? Well, it's not worth that. It's floodplain property. It's in a floodplain. I said, well, I realize that, but it's still a racetrack. I don't care where it's at. It's in a floodplain.
Yeah, it's a business, right?
Yeah, it's a racetrack. I said, it isn't. I'm not selling floodplain property. I'm selling a racetrack. You asked me what we'd sell the racetrack for. Well, it's only really worth about $250,000 to $300,000. So, they kind of devalued the value of the property $1 million, as looking at it as floodplain property and not as a racetrack. So I said, you need to understand, I'm not trying to sell the property. You've got somebody that's wanting to buy the property, So, and I asked her, I said, well, what are they wanting to do with it? Who is it and what are they wanting to do with it? Well, we can't tell you who it is, and we don't have any idea what they want to do with it. I'm not sure what they want to do with it.
But they also indicated that person contacted them wanting to purchase the property. Let's be clear on that.
They said that this person contacted the city wanting to purchase it. So, it's been about 4 or 5 months later we got into the thing. The city actually turned us into the Corps of Engineers for dumping dirt in an area that wasn't supposed to be dumped, which I knew nothing about it, and the city was dumping it there too. So the Corps of Engineers got a hold of me, and it was a wetland area. So we had to go and purchase property in another area to put in wetlands because we'd taken property here out of wetlands. Well, it just so happened that the guy that I talked to doing the wetlands, I actually knew him, and from when I was in the farming business, he bought calves from me when I was in the dairy business, and I'd heard that he was the buyer, and I said, why, if you wanted to purchase that property down there, why didn't you call me? Why did you call the city? And he said, I didn't call the city, and I don't have an interest in buying it. The city called me wanting me to buy it. He said, they contacted me. I didn't contact them, and they wanted to know if I would buy it. He said, I told him then, he said, I can't afford that type of ground. It's a racetrack, and it's going to be way too expensive for, because that's what he does. He takes property and puts it back in wetlands. He would. They wanted him to take the whole property and designate it as wetlands and have nothing down here. That's what he does. And so, them saying that they were contacted, and then of course that's when everything started to escalate with them trying to get rid of me. If they can cancel the conditional use permit and force this to go back as wetlands, then it doesn't have a value to it. Nobody's going to build anything in a wetland. That's the reason wherever you see all these racetracks that are underwater. That's the reason they're underwater. They're all built in undesirable ground that nobody wants for anything. That's the reason these racetracks, every time you have a flood, they're all underwater because it's undesirable property that has no use for anything else but a racetrack.
Right. Dennis, let's talk about how they got to the conditional use permit, because they started off by talking about the decibel level, and you wanted them to change the decibel level and go by whatever the city ordinance. Take us through that process as well, how that started and how it's worked its way to where we are at right now.
Well, whenever the decibel says, in fact, the conditional use permit doesn't say anything about decibels. It just references the city ordinance on the sound issue. And so the city ordinance says 65 decibels at the property line. Well, it doesn't say how it's to be taken. It doesn't say anything. 65 decibels, normal conversation is about 65 decibels. If you've got two people standing talking to one another, that's what they're talking at is, 60 to 65, just to give you a reference point. So depending on how you take it.
A fair level would be somewhere around 90, 95, right, Dennis?
Most tracks that I called a bunch of tracks, they're about 95. A lot of tracks at 100 feet, the car has to be 95 decibels or under. They actually take a test on the car, and you do go to all of these tracks. They've got a rope they put on them, a 100-foot rope to get away from the car 100 feet and start it up and run it at, 4,000, 5,000 RPMs. I don't know what the number is. And it has to be under 95 decibels or they can't race, And other tracks just have, 95 decibels at the property line. So I'm not sure where they came up with this 65. And I've talked to the ex-mayor of Grain Valley and actually the property owner. And I said, where did you guys come up with this 65 decibels? And they just said, well, we just made it up. We didn't know what 65 decibels was. It's just a number they pulled out of the air that meant nothing and didn't determine, how it's to be taken. From the EPA standpoint, it says that, from whenever you get into sound issues, there's a 70 decibels over an 8-hour period. And we did a test down here over a 6-hour period, and we were at about 60s, anywhere from the high 50s to 60s. At one spot, we were at 65.2 over a 6-hour period. If you extend that out using the EPA's recommendations, it would have been well under 65. So from our contention, based on how the EPA says to take a sound study over what they call a time-weighted average, we're under their decibel reading using that formula.
Kurt?
Yeah, Dennis Shrout is joining us, the owner of Valley Speedway. We talked about this a year ago. It's a very few amount of people in Grain Valley that are complaining about the noise. How can the very few put this much political pressure on the Board of Aldermen, a governmental body like that? Or is the people that sit on these boards, they're really going to do what they want to do regardless of what kind of feedback they get from the community? Just kind of talk about that relationship between the citizens of Green Valley and who sits on the Board of Aldermen, as well as who serves as mayor and other positions on the city government?
Well, whenever we started, probably the first of the year, the city come to us and they said, we need to come up with a formula here. People are out here complaining. And actually, just for your information, the gal that's led the charge on this ran for mayor. The gal that actually has led the charge on this for 10 years ran for mayor. That's how serious they are trying to get rid of the racetrack. She wanted to be mayor so she could help get rid of the racetrack. So, they're serious about trying to close the racetrack down. So we sat down and negotiated with them. Everybody complained about us cutting our Friday show out. Well, that was part of our negotiation process with the city of cutting back to racing 1 day a week. It wasn't because we hate sprint cars or hate sprint car fans. They said, well, you're running too many dates. Racing 60 days a year is too many dates. So we cut it back to 35 days. We've got a self-imposed curfew of 11 o'clock, and I think this year we've been done before 10, except maybe 2 or 3 races, trying to get done early. We run our quietest cars last. I mean, people complain about some of the classes we run last. Well, the reason we run them last is to, our quietest cars, to where whenever we do get past that 9:30, we're running quiet cars and not the loudest cars. And we came up with all this thing. We jacked with the city on this negotiation process of what we considered compromise, because the city never compromised one thing. They didn't come up with any compromises on their own. They were all on our part. We presented our compromise program to the city of what we were willing to do to try to become a better neighbor, and try to appease some of these people that were complaining about the racetrack. And we never even got a response from them. They didn't respond to our compromise program at all. And during this process, after they had our compromise program, they had this meeting at the city hall, and it was brought up to have a revocation hearing for the conditional use permit. And the Board of Aldermen, every one of them, it was a unanimous vote to have a meeting to cancel our conditional use permit. And everyone, you talk to the city council, and they say, well, no, we don't want the racetrack shut down. We want to come up with something that everybody can live with. They had our program of what we were willing to do, cut the racing in half, had a curfew, and they still passed a meeting to revoke our conditional use permit and voted on it unanimously. Everybody wanted to cancel it.
So that just proves they want this racetrack shut down no matter what. All this situation about noise and other things, they just want this track closed no matter what.
Smoke and mirrors, right.
Well, if you go, the city over the last probably 90 days, they've got what they call a comprehensive plan of what they think the future of the city is. On their comprehensive plan, whenever you look at it, it shows this whole racetrack area is green space. There's nothing here but green space. They show no racetrack, no nothing.
Isn't that something?
And that's the comprehensive plan of the future of Green Valley. There's nothing here.
Dennis, before we let you go, we're up against the break. What do we need to do here? As fans of motorsports, I know that they've showed up in droves every time City Hall. It's this Thursday, July 10th. What do the people need to do? Give us some guidance on what you'd like to see done come Thursday night.
They need to show up in force. They need to be cordial, not screaming, hollering, slurs. I mean, that does us no good whatsoever. And I don't know if the city's going to give them an opportunity to speak. At one time they said they could speak, and then they find out all these people coming, and they say, well, no, we don't want them to speak. So I'm not sure if they're going to let them speak or not at this point. If they will let them speak, they need to get up. The people that live in Green Valley are the ones that really need to get up and speak. And the people that come to the races need to come up and say, hey, we go to Casey's and buy our gas. We go to Patricia's and buy groceries. We go to the restaurants and eat. They need to tell them all the money they're spending here outside of what they spend at the racetrack.
Yeah.
I mean, and just to where everybody understands, even if they vote to cancel our conditional use permit, we will file suit against them, and while it's going through the litigation process, we will continue to operate. They're not going to shut us down Thursday. My guess is it will wind up in a court battle, and we'll let the courts decide who's right and who's wrong.
That could take years. So you could still be in business for quite a while, and you plan on being, don't you?
Oh, yeah, I talked to another guy that went through the whole court battle with another city, and he said he operated for 4 years after they filed suit. So, it's...
Let me ask you
and
this,
then
though.
He won his court case. There's nothing that says just, the city, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, there's just a bunch of bullies up there in certain areas, and I'm not talking about, every time I talk to the city council and the mayor, oh, yeah, we love the track, we want to keep it open, we think it brings in a lot of money to our city and the revenue and stuff, and then they got a comprehensive plan with no racetrack on it, and all of them vote unanimously to have a revocation hearing to shut the track down.
They speak with forked tongue. They speak with forked tongue. Dennis, we're up against the break. We hope the best for you. We hope that everybody shows up. It's tough anytime you got to deal with government, and especially in a tough situation like what you're in right now. But we only hope the best for you. We'll get everybody to show up and show the support. When those, again, as Dennis said, have your thoughts together. If you do get an opportunity to speak, get up there, make your point. Be short about it, but get to the point and let them know what you think and about what the racetrack means to the city, how much money you spend, and then give some other people the opportunity to speak on Thursday, and if they allow you to do so, which I'm not so sure they're going to do it. Dennis, we're pulling for you, bud. I wish we could talk to you about. I wish we could talk to you more about the good things.
Page, some phone numbers to call the city, and if maybe some phone calls this week, none of it, it could help, At least they know we're watching them.
All right, Dennis. Well, we've got your back. Anything you need, let us know.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
All right. Dennis Shrout, the owner of Grain Valley Speedway, and Kirk, usually when the government has their ears pinned back like that, there's not a good ending in sight. It's just my feelings. You never feel good about it when they seem so motivated to do what they're going to do.
Well, it would be one thing if they offered a fair amount of money for Dennis to walk away, but they're not doing that. They're wanting to kick him out and then not allow him the type of financial settlement that he would be due for having his business harmed for the last. And his business has been harmed with all of this going on for the last several years, but they're not even willing to do that.
Right. All right, we'll take your phone calls when we come back, 913-381-0810. Call us in. Let us know what you think about what's going on in Grain Valley. You never know what politicians are listening to this morning. I'm sure there's one or two that probably anticipated us talking about it this morning. So if you'd like to voice your opinion right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB, and maybe the people from Grain Valley will be listening, give us a call, 913-381-0810. We'll be back with more Track Talk brought to you by McCarthy Auto Group when we continue.
Track Talk.